Welcome to Open Mic. I'm the host, Mike Balsom, here at Giant TV. Today, a little bit of an update of sorts. They were extremely important in the 2018 regional and municipal elections back in fall of that year. A Better Niagara is the name of the group, and we have Liz Benian with us today. And Liz, we were talking before we started rolling here, and you said your garden looks a lot better this year than it did last year.
It certainly
does. And that's because of what?
Well, last year at this time, we were going crazy, bringing in different candidates and interviewing candidates for the election to figure out who we were endorsing. And a lot of the interviews were actually done at my place. And so I kept passing my garden on the way to the patio to do the interviews. But the garden didn't get too much work last year, I have to say.
You could have put some trowels into the hands of some of those candidates.
I probably should have.
Done the interviews right there. If they had a green thumb, you'd back them.
Give them a hoe and we could both be sorting out the weeds while we were talking. Yeah.
So take me through some of that process. When your group, how long has your group been together?
I think, well, now it's probably about 2 years. The group came together because some people were very concerned about what was happening, especially at the regional level. And they started talking about what they could do to change things. And they knew a municipal election was coming up. And so, you know, it was a lot of kitchen table. It was a lot of sitting around with people from the community saying, okay, we know we want to change things. How do we do it effectively? And over time, we came up with the strategy that we used, which was finding good candidates, and we found them through a variety of different ways, people we thought would be good candidates, and we put them all through the same exact process. So everyone had a personal interview, and usually there were two of us on the interview panel. Sometimes there was only one, but usually there were two people. We asked them the same set of 6 questions, and the questions were not about policy. It was to find out how they thought and how they reacted towards things.
Looking at your website, you talk about 3 focuses of A Better Niagara: right. Transparency, accountability, and integrity. So were those the focus of the 6 questions?
To some extent, yes. But we asked questions just to get people talking because we wanted to find out who they were. And so the interviews lasted anywhere, because it was, like I said, the same 6 questions, but we didn't put a timer on it. So the interviews lasted anywhere from half an hour to as much as an hour in some cases. We got a really good feel for people that way. We also, if we decided to endorse them, they had to sign an integrity, accountability, transparency pledge. And that was not to us. That was to the public that they intended to serve. And it was just to tell them how they intended to behave as elected officials. And
when we go back to those interviews, all of these candidates that you had these interviews with, they had already expressed their wishes to run officially, so
yes.
They had already thrown in their name officially. Was there anyone that came to you and said, I'm thinking of running, and you interviewed them?
No.
Everybody declared?
That's right.
Okay, that clarifies things.
Yeah.
So from that stage, you asked for this pledge. Was it fairly easy for each of these candidates to sign that pledge? You had 93 candidates, is that?
I think it was 92.
92.
Yeah, I think so. And we would not endorse them unless they signed the pledge, because we made it clear that these are the things that we cared about. And there was no hesitation, I don't think, on anyone's part. They understood who we were and what we were expecting, and they realized that this was a pledge to their constituents and not to us. And I think we had, we also looked at, we wanted to support good candidates, but we also wanted to make sure that the people that we found had not been doing a good job, that we also advocated against their reelection. And so there were 11 regional council candidates that we advocated against, and advocating against means we took out ads or we produced flyers that we distributed in their community with their local people, or in some cases where we could, we did it through Canada Post, Grimsby as an example of that. And out of those 11 candidates that we opposed re-election, 9 were not re-elected.
Well, let's face it, on those 2 that your target didn't work on, at least one of them, there really wasn't a strong candidate running up against Jim Diodati in Niagara Falls from there.
The electorate thought so.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about Niagara Falls is we found we were most effective in communities where there was a significant number of good candidates, and also where we had good reach into the community. So we had a lot of community support. Grimsby is an excellent example of that.
9 of the candidates that you endorsed were elected, including the mayor, the new mayor, Jeff Jordan.
Well, I put it this way. The citizens of Grimsby turfed out all of their elected officials with the exception of one local councillor. All of them. The mayor, the regional councillor, and all the local councillors. And for good reason, as we found out, because now we know the previous bunch dug them into a $22 million hole with that biodigester fiasco.
Can you comment on that lawsuit that is going forward now?
The only comment I can make is that it's good to see that someone's being held accountable. Because there's been a lot of problems at the region, at the NPCA, and a lot of different places around Niagara, and we all know it. But there's a tendency to say, let's just move on. Okay, the past is the past. We're gonna change as we move forward. You know, we don't want to get down in the mud and deal with those issues. We have to deal with those issues. People have to be held accountable. We have to know what went wrong because we need to make it better. We can't make it better if we don't know what happened in the first place. And people, public officials especially, who've breached public trust need to be held accountable for that.
I find it interesting because, you know, if I'm an employee and I do something wrong in the name of the business, I could be held accountable. I could be taken to court as the person who made that decision. There's not a lot of instances that I'm aware of where an elected official is also held to that same standard. And with this lawsuit that has named the former mayor Bob Bentley in Grimsby as someone who's being sued, do you think that that's going to make some people think twice now about throwing their name in?
Only if they're planning on doing what he did. I mean, it shouldn't. This shouldn't deter good people from wanting to serve their community. In fact, bad behavior deters good people from wanting to serve their community. We need to root out that bad behavior so that good people feel like it's a noble thing to serve your community. And so right now there's a lack of trust. There's a lack of trust for good reason. But if we had good people doing good things, doing their best, one of the things that people thought is we wanted candidates to do a certain agenda, and we didn't. It was nonpartisan. We didn't have an agenda in mind. We just wanted good people to go in and serve their community to their best of their ability. And we said to the candidates, we are never going to come to you and say, we want you to do this or we want you to do that or we think you should vote this way or that way. Never in a million years. We wanted good people to use their own good judgment to serve their community in the best possible way.
There were some accusations that, and we talked about this on election night, that perhaps A Better Niagara might have been closely linked to the New Democrats. And you debunked that, and you continue to say that that's not the case.
And that's not the case.
That's a great thing to hear. And again, you know, looking at the candidates that you did endorse, can you say at this point that those that were elected are now showing those 3 pillars and have been since last October: transparency, accountability, and integrity?
If there were any glaring examples of them not doing that, we would be shouting it from the rooftops. It would be all over our Facebook page. So far, it looks like people are trying to do their best. And we're happy with that. But part of our role, our continuing role over the next several years, is to be a watchdog organization. We haven't gone away, and we're not going away, and we're going to be here in the next election too. And so part of our job is to continue to monitor the local councils as best we can. We have to rely on our citizen, partners and friends, but also especially the region and the NPCA. We have to keep an eye on those things because those were the big problem areas last year. And we're going to, track how people are voting on issues that are not because we want them to vote one way or the other, but I'll give you an example. There was a vote recently at the NPCA about whether Bill Hodgson should get an apology or not. Right. Okay? I don't know how anyone could argue that he shouldn't. He was the NPCA board member who was harassed out of his job, accused of doing something he didn't do on a report that they never made public. It was a whole lot of nonsense, and the Auditor General said as much in her report. There is no question that Bill Hodgson deserved an apology. some people on that board voted against it. Well, we track things like that. So we're just keeping track. We're keeping watch. We're making sure that, that we're getting the kind of governance we would hope we would get.
I'm thinking back over the last 30 years of local politics here in Niagara, and I can't think of another example of an organized watchdog group that has had such an effect. Do you have any past history of that happening before here in Niagara?
So I've only been here 11 years, so I can't go back too far in history. From what I've heard, though, it's the first time that there was this kind of thing. I've seen it before because, you know, when I lived in Oakville, we did a similar thing. I was the president of a group called Oakville Green, and it was a group that was mostly about controlling development and preserving natural spaces. And we did manage to change the way people in Oakville voted. And Oakville is now considered one of the best managed, greenest communities that there is. And we saw what a change it made when people started paying attention and they started voting according to the things they cared about. And we got a new mayor and new council, and things changed in Oakville. So I brought that experience with me here. And when I met up with this group of citizens who was concerned about what was going on at the region, I thought we can do the same here. It's just a matter of getting citizens involved and reaching out to them and letting them know what was going on. One of the most important things we found in the last election, before the last election, was that citizens in Grimsby, for example, didn't know what was really going on at the region because they weren't getting the St. Catharines Standard, they weren't hearing the news stories. And so one of the things that we thought is if people really knew what was going on, they'd be as outraged as we are. And if they were outraged, they would vote differently. And so basically most of what we did is we just told people what was going on. Just
got the word out.
Yeah. And I have to say, you know, the journalists were all doing a bang up job. And it was getting their good work out to the public. And that made the difference. That was the biggest difference. Let me give a shout out to journalists and radio hosts and everybody who's doing that good work.
Well, of course, it's important to get the word out there.
Yeah.
How much more difficult was it for you to, like, I understand that you did this in Oakville. Mm-hmm. Now you come to Niagara and you're having to follow almost 130 elected positions and 12 different municipalities plus that level of regional government. It must have been a little bit more challenging than the organization that you would have done in Oakville.
You know, it was a pretty daunting prospect. Could we do it? How could we do it? And in the midst of doing it, oh my goodness, what did we take on? You know, it was a pretty daunting thing. But we had dedicated people who really cared about something as simple as good governance. That was it. And people who just wanted to see good governance in this region and who were willing to devote months of their lives to getting good governance.
Are you happy so far with some of the things that have happened since last October? So we've seen more news come out about some underhandedness and whatever at the region. Are you happy with the results of what's happening there?
I'm glad that more information has come out. I'm glad that the regional council is functioning better. I'm, as I said already, glad about some of the people that are in there now. I think people are doing a generally pretty good job. It's not to say there aren't still issues, and including at the NPCA, there's still issues. But in general, I think overall things are much better than they were before, and they're going to continue to improve as long as people continue to pay attention. That's the thing I really want to emphasize. Municipal politics matters. The decisions that are made on the local level are the things that are most likely to affect your life. And I know that the municipal level is where most people, you know, don't vote. And a lot of times they don't vote because they don't know enough about the candidates. And that's one thing that we wanted to make sure, that people did know enough about the candidates. And I think that made all the difference, too.
It was still a very low voter turnout. I mean, some of the municipalities, Niagara-on-the-Lake, for example, Pelham as well, where there was a lot of turnover in the councils with the mayor's seat as well. Very good turnout in those municipalities. But then the big three, the turnout was, again, pathetically low.
We were told by a lot of people when we first started out, you've got to get more people to the polls or you can't change anything. And I rejected that advice utterly. because it's an impossible task to get more people to the polls. You only get a lot more people going to the polls when there's some gigantic thing that affects them really personally in their own community. It's really hard to change that. But what I did want was people going to the polls who were informed. And that's what we concentrated on. So we never, it would be great if we could get more people voting in municipal elections. I wish more people did. But I don't want just anyone voting. I want people voting who pay attention. If they're not going to pay attention, they might as well not vote. Okay, so I want the people who do vote to be well informed.
When I look at the regional chair, Jim Bradley, you endorsed him. He was one of the candidates that passed your litmus test.
Yeah.
How do you feel he's doing so far as regional chair?
I think he's doing fine. I have like I said, in general, it's early days. It's not even a year since everyone was elected. So far, so good.
Is it difficult right now knowing that there is discussion about changes in regional municipal government here in Niagara? Is it difficult for your organization to get your head around where this might take us in the next 3 years? Because we don't know what Mr. Ford and the provincial government are going to do with the region.
Yeah, this is just my personal philosophy of how I deal with all kinds of outside stress. I can't have any control over that. I have no idea what's going to happen. I can't worry about it. I can only worry about the things that I can worry about that I can actually affect. They're the only things worth worrying about. So I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the future. We'll deal with that when it comes. Right now, I'm still concerned with things as they are.
As they are is one option. There's the 4-city option that has been batted about. There's the one single regional tier and getting rid of the municipalities as well, as that's been batted about. Does A Better Niagara have a preference?
We haven't made any kind of position on any of that. But in general, I can say that the board of A Better Niagara believes that the closer government is to the people, the better. And the problem is, if you have one big Niagara and you have huge areas of people electing one person, it's going to cost a lot of money for those candidates to run, which means your average person can't do it. It's not going to be the guy who owns the garage or the insurance salesman from town who's lived there for 30. It's going to be somebody who's politically connected, who's got a lot of, deep-pocketed financiers who can help them with their campaign, and that's a problem. I don't want to live in a place where only the very wealthy can run in municipal elections, and I don't want to live in a place where you're you can reach your local councillor, you can go to your local town council meeting.
Yes.
But the bigger those areas get, the harder it is. And the farther away your government is, the harder it is for you to have any meaningful impact. So there's two things. There's the distance between the person and the elected official, and then the second thing is the money thing. I don't want it to be only rich, connected people who are able to run in municipal elections.
And would it also lean more heavily towards the big three, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and Welland, who have bigger populations, and a candidate who is well connected, for instance, in St. Catharines, 133,000 people in St. Catharines?
Possibly, and I also think that parties would have a lot more influence. And, on the local level, it should be about neighbors helping neighbors. It shouldn't be about partisan politics.
The NPCA, you brought that up. NPCA governance, is on the table. Board chair, currently the board chair, Dave Bilsma from West Lincoln. Vice chair, Diana Hewson from Pelham. She was one of your endorsed candidates, I believe. She
also was the candidate who rejected our endorsement after she had accepted it and after we'd advertised on her behalf.
Why did she do that?
She thought we were running a negative campaign. She didn't understand that we had always said we were going to endorse. So
she didn't like the fact that you targeted those 11 candidates?
Right. That's right.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Also appointed John Ingrao, who is not a politician, and a number of other people that are not politicians. You have a new CAO, although it's still temporary, officially, Gail Wood at the NPCA. Are you happy with the direction that's taking right now, and how would you like to see the governance of the NPCA shake down?
Okay, so there's so much to unpack with the NPCA.
And there's the big controversy, too, about how many seats Niagara will have versus the Hamilton area.
So I should start off by saying you wanted to know what we've done since the election. One of the things we did is we went to court 3 times.
Yes.
We had to go to court the first time because the old board of the NPCA wouldn't give up their seats.
That's right.
So these councillors would not get out of their seats, despite the fact that on December 6th, the regional council had put new people in. The old people would not vacate their seats. So 3 days before Christmas, we were in court asking the judge to clearly state who was on the council and who wasn't. And of course, the judge said the new people were on. And then come January, the new board, the old board, the old staff, I should say, the old staff wouldn't schedule a meeting. So the new council couldn't take their seats. So we were back in court, and the judge ordered the staff to schedule a meeting. And then we were in court again because, as you know, Hamilton and Haldeman were insisting that we were, and the old board were insisting we were only entitled to 5 members on the NPCA. And in the meantime, Hamilton and Haldeman had doubled their membership on the board. And so we went back to court because our reading of the act was very clear. We were entitled to 27. That doesn't mean we thought we should have 27. I don't, for a $10 million organization, you don't want that many members. But so we went back to court. And of course, the judge once again said, yes, we were right that the act said 27. And so the first thing is this compromise of having 15 members, I think, is reasonable. If Haldeman and Hamilton aren't going to take back the extra members they added, I think it's reasonable that we add a few more. I think it's reasonable that 3 will be reserved for regional councillors. That's fine. I think in general, the direction the NPCA is heading in is good. I think Gail Woods has been a good CEO in many regards. However, I think that there's been some tension between some of the interim board members and the new board members that are coming on that are citizen appointments. I don't think there's a need for that. There's been some unfriendly things said that, they're troublesome and that it's causing confusion. And there's just been, remarks like that made. I think it's unnecessary. And also that, potentially citizens couldn't do as good a job as councillors, especially in terms of watching money. I would hazard to say that there are citizens probably more qualified in some cases than the people who are on there now as councillors in some respects. And there's many big boards that spend public money or that are in charge of organizations that spend public money that are all citizens. And I don't think the councillors should forget that before they were elected, they were just citizens too. So I don't think they got superpowers suddenly when they were elected that made them, special.
Liz, does it boggle your mind a bit? Because it sort of boggles my mind when I listen to you talk about your 3 successive court cases. Does it boggle your mind that if A Better Niagara hadn't stepped up and put forth these court cases, that things would have just been rubber stamped and gone through? And how often has that happened in the past?
Yeah, that's why we need citizens to pay attention. That's why a citizens watchdog group is, I think, important. And I think it's important everywhere. It would be great if all communities had some kind of group like that. I'm not sure why we had to do it. I don't know why council didn't stand up for itself. But anyways, it doesn't matter. We were there and we did it, and I'm glad we did it. And I think it just shows the important role that citizens can play.
I've said this quite a bit over the last 2 or 3 years, is the fact that most people would not have known what the NPCA was and who was on the NPCA until all of these controversies came to light. I mean, we're aware of the NPCA when we go to, a conservation area because we see the sign. But we never really followed the politics behind it until all of this stuff was brought to light.
Yeah. I mean, in most places, the Conservation Authority does its good stuff. It makes comments on development applications. It protects water sources and wetlands. It prevents flooding and erosion. It does the normal stuff, and nobody thinks too much about it. The problem here was that we had some bad actors on regional council who took over the Conservation Authority, and that also took over the Conservation Authority's foundation. And they wrecked that too. So I don't know, we've said this many times before, but I just want to highlight it again, that the Conservation Authority Foundation was losing money the last couple of years. It was bringing in less money than it was spending, and it was also giving less and less away. The purpose of the foundation was to fund good works. And in the last year that they reported to the Canadian Revenue Agency, they only spent 3% on good works. It was a grand total of $3,500 that they gave away. 3%, they're a charity. 3% is what they spent on good works. 87% of that money got spent on basically two parties they threw, and 10% got spent on administration.
Wow.
And so that organization has to be completely rebuilt. So, the problem was we had some bad actors on council who managed to wreck a lot of things along the way.
Wow. Looking at, again, if you're looking at money, let me ask you this question. How does A Better Niagara fund itself, and where does that money come from? How do you keep your website up and do the things that you do?
So we're all volunteers, and we all work out of our homes, and we all dedicate a lot of time. And so that's it. What cost us money in the election, and we're very forthright about it, and we've put in our claims, because third-party advertisers, which we were registered as in every community, had to put in our spending for the election. So anyone can go look at it in any of the municipalities. We raised about $23,000. We raised that money through a bunch of donations from all over the region, from people who realized that things needed to change. And we spent the money according to the rules. So you could only spend so much in each community according to its population. In Grimsby, where we had sort of the best connection to the citizens, and they did a good job raising funds, we were able to spend, towards the limit of what we were allowed to spend in Grimsby. And that's partly why we had such good results in Grimsby. So that's the money. $23,000 is basically what we had. We have a little bit left over, and that's what we're keeping the website going with. We're going to reach out to the people who believe in good governance and ask them to continue to donate so that we can just keep it going. But we don't need a lot of money. We won't until we're gearing up for the next election.
Nothing for the federal election?
No.
You won't get behind any candidates, endorse anybody for this federal election?
No, we're municipal, local politics only.
And you'll always maintain that as your focus?
Well, I can't make promises for people 20 years from now.
But right now, that's,
yes.
that's the plan.
Yeah.
If I look at your website, you look at some policies. I think there's 5 that you look at. If we can really quickly, because we are running out of time, but transportation, in 30 seconds, what would you like to see with transportation?
We want to see multimodal transportation. We want to see good public transportation so that anybody anywhere in the region has access to public transportation so they can live, work, and play in their community easily.
Affordable housing is another one?
I think, these are kind of motherhood things. We believe that everybody should be able to afford a roof over their heads. And if you're one of the things we all know is we don't have enough affordable housing in this community. We'd like to see groups working together to create it. And
we are seeing some of that. A couple of new developments in St. Catharines. There's one in Welland, I believe, as well. So there seems to be some change there happening. Smart growth is another one of your platforms. 30 seconds on that.
Yeah, we think it's really important that, especially in Niagara, where we've already lost so much of our natural features and our really critical farmland. Like Canada, most people don't realize, only 5% of our land in the whole country is prime farmland. And a lot of it's right here in Southern Ontario. We're losing a lot. And here in Niagara, we have the best farmland in the country, and a lot of it's being paved over. So we think it's really important that we balance growth with preservation. And we think one of the best ways to do that is to implement a natural heritage system like other places like Halton Region has done. And once you know what you can't build on, then you know where you can build. We're not saying stop growth. We're saying do it smartly, put it in the right place.
Jobs?
Of course, people need work, and we need good jobs. And we know that there's been a lot of suffering in the Niagara region as manufacturing has moved out. It's no different than many other places. So it's trying to find good employers. And I think in a lot of cases that's helping businesses that are already here expand and grow, and helping, the smaller companies that are local companies, helping those entrepreneurs. I think that's really important.
And the last of your 5 platforms mentioned on your website, the environment.
That goes in with the smart growth thing. Our health as human beings is entirely tied into the environment. So is our economy. The economy is entirely dependent on the natural resources that we have. We have to protect those things. Everybody needs clean water. Everybody needs clean air. And we need biodiversity. And the only way to protect biodiversity is to save enough of the natural environment and to, as each individual, help by doing what we can in our own yards and gardens. So we're all about, preserving enough to keep everybody healthy and to keep the economy strong as well. It's all tied in together.
I have to ask this question. Any chance that we'll see your name on a ballot in the future? Never.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Working behind the scenes. Liz Benian from A Better Niagara joining us on Open Mic today. Fascinating talking to you, and good luck, and keep on watching. And Liz, we'll let you get back to that garden that you love so much. You've been watching Open Mic on Giant TV. Thanks for watching.